did the Nuremberg trial mean to a young Richard Goldstone? Was that part of your studies when you were growing up?
Well, it certainly was. The first important point was that I had, the week I was asked to take the appointment in The Hague, I'd been approached by President Mandela and given the very exciting news that the new cabinet wanted me as one of the first 11 justices on our brand new constitutional court, and that was any lawyer's dream. Then this question came up, the UN request that I should become prosecutor, because they were desperate to get somebody that the Security Council would agree to. 8 prior nominees had been vetoed by one or other member of the Security Council. And the issue that was raised was whether it was appropriate for a member of our new constitutional court to become a prosecutor. And of course the Jackson precedent was raised, and they said, well, if it was okay for a justice of the United States Supreme Court to become a prosecutor, an international prosecutor, why not South Africa? And that made a difference. It made a difference to my colleagues, to the then coming into being of the appointment of Arthur Chaskalson as the first Chief Justice in post-apartheid South Africa. So the Jackson precedent was important. And let me add immediately, it was important too to my successor, Louise Arbour, who was a justice on the Ontario Supreme Court. And she told me subsequently, when she was questioned about this by the government and by her colleagues, she said, well, I've got 2 precedents, Justice Jackson and Justice Goldstone. But it was. I'm not being flippant about it. It was an important precedent.
You also mentioned the Nuremberg. Was that, as you were planning the prosecution of both Yugoslavia and subsequently Rwanda, did the principles of the trial itself, were they studied, were they part of your preparation? Well,
I looked at it, but it really wasn't very relevant. And for one reason in particular, the Nuremberg prosecutors were blessed with all the documents that the Nazis had put together. I'm sure you know the record better than I do, but I was struck at how few witnesses were called. Most of the evidence, well over, I'd say 3/4 of the evidence, was documentary. We didn't have that. So our prosecution strategy had to be a very different one. But you know, certainly I was very fortunate in having dinner with Telford Taylor in New York soon after I was appointed. But to be frank, no, there wasn't a great deal of practical value that we learned from Nuremberg. Well, the biggest challenge was setting up a prosecutor's office in the UN system. That was a hugely difficult task. It's a huge bureaucracy. This was a completely new animal in the UN stable. They'd never had any experience with a criminal court. A different challenge was getting adequate, competent, efficient staff. Being a UN office, we had to get wide geographic spread, and the sort of people we wanted were not unemployed at home. So we had to get people who were prepared to make the move. That became even more difficult in Rwanda. It was one thing to get people to The Hague, which is quite a pleasant city in the middle of Europe. It was another one getting them to come to Kigali in the aftermath of a terrible genocide. So that was a huge challenge. And the third one, I think, was diplomatic, getting governments to agree to cooperate with the tribunal, to allow our investigators into their countries, to interview witnesses, eventually to make arrests. This was all a very diplomatic and really there were a lot of troubles. Another was securing and writing an agreement with the United States government for the purpose of getting intelligence information. That was a very challenging set of meetings and negotiations. So there were many start-up issues. I issued 2 indictments against Karadzic and Mladic. One arose out of the wars between 91 and 93, and those were crimes against humanity and war crimes. And then within a couple of months after the massacre at Srebrenica, I issued a second indictment based on genocide.
Gotcha. But wasn't that really the first time that even an indictment using the term genocide?
I think that's correct, absolutely. It was indeed.
you are the senior statesman. Obviously, the most recent one has probably gotten you the most notoriety. How has the report kind of impacted you personally?
It was a huge personal impact. I obviously knew what I was getting into from the political point of view, and I knew that the findings that we made would be heavily criticized by the Israeli government and the Israeli army. But I really didn't anticipate the personal ad hominem attacks that followed, and this was obviously extremely unpleasant for me. But the worst burden for me was the effect it had on my family, because it was very unpleasant for them to be caught up in this whole attack on in the case of my wife, in the case of my children and grandchildren. That was a very heavy burden.
How are you doing today with that? I mean, is just...
Well, it's calmed down a great deal, and of course it is important that subsequently some of the investigations by the Israeli military have confirmed to the hilt some of the most serious findings that we made in the Gaza report, and that of course has made a difference to the attitude of many people, and certainly makes me feel a lot better.
A lot of these tribunals are winding down. Do you suspect that they will be used again, or?
Well, no, but their legacy is the International Criminal Court. If the ad hoc tribunals in particular hadn't been successful, we wouldn't have an International Criminal Court. If they'd failed, and they succeeded in some important respects, one of them we don't even think about anymore. One of the successes, certainly in my view, is that an international tribunal can have a fair trial. That wasn't a given. There were criticisms of Nuremberg, and that was a very different affair. Nuremberg wasn't an international court; it was a multinational court, victorious powers. But this was something new, and they were sufficiently successful to be judged successful. They also advanced the law. Perhaps the most important single example is in relation to gender-related crimes, systematic mass rape, and other horrible forms of gender violence. So the law was advanced, and all this gave a huge impetus to the move towards setting up a permanent international criminal court. So I think the development of the law, it's being used. The cases from the Yugoslavia and Rwanda Tribunal are now being quoted in extenso by the International Court of Justice in the Bosnia and Serbia case. They're being used by the International Criminal Court. Sometimes they're followed, sometimes they're not followed. It's not the point. A body of law has been created. So I think they were. I think the ad hoc tribunals will join Nuremberg as being if Nuremberg was the first step, the ad hoc tribunals were the second, together with the hybrid tribunal, leading to the International Criminal Court, which I've got no doubt is here to stay.
What's the question you get asked the most?
I suppose the question I get asked the most is about Nuremberg. What was the importance of Nuremberg and the Nuremberg legacy? That seems to probably be the number one question. There are many others coming from both sides. Is there any point, peace and justice? There are many issues that happily have arisen.
What is the legacy of Nuremberg?
Well, the legacy of Nuremberg is holding individuals responsible criminally for tremendous war crimes. It was really the first time. And it's that legacy that was really put to sleep for almost half a century, and has now happily come to life again.
I'm just thrilled you're here, and I hope I know it's the first, but hopefully it will not be the last.
No, thank you very much. It's wonderful to be here.
Thank you.